Welcome to Phonogenics 101, a Riotboy production hosted by Jeremy Gloff. The podcast where people who love music discuss albums track by track. Please hit subscribe, and if you'd like to support this podcast, patreon.com/Jeremy Gloff or Venmo @Jeremy Gloff. And now, on to the music. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Phonogenics 101. This is season 3, and we are about to embark on a brand new journey tonight. Eurythmics. I once called them the Eurythmics, like in the early days of the internet, and I was corrected by a fan. So
yeah, would be corrected on that.
I will never make that mistake on this podcast. But we have a returning Phonogenics 101 panelist, and then some new friends here. So I guess I'll give a little bit about my history of Eurythmics. Of course, in 1983, I would have been 8 years old, so Sweet Dreams was the first time I heard about the band. My mom bought the Sweet Dreams album and the Touch album when I was 8 and 9, so I knew every word to those albums. The first time I really harassed my mom was to buy Touch Dance on vinyl, because I saw it at the record store. I'm like, I need Touch Dance, and I've been with the band ever since. And Annie Lennox, the soul stuff. I was never a big Spiritual Cowboys fan, but I'm open to listening at some point. But tonight we're going to start with their discography, the debut album, In The Garden. We're going to talk about it track by track. This is an album that wasn't a hit like Sweet Dreams was, but I knew about this album because it was listed in the discography of this little book that I had when I was a kid. And it had the song titles. I'm like, Caveman Head, this sounds like such a weird song. So I think I found this on CD as an import in the maybe the early 90s, and that's when I first heard this album. So I didn't hear it till way later. And everyone in the circle is going to kind of talk about where they found the album. But what I'd love for everyone to do, I'm Jeremy Gloff from Tampa, Florida. Thanks to the subscribers and my Patreon people for keeping this thing afloat. And enough about me. Let's go to the panel here. If you want to talk about where you're from and your history with Eurythmics, where you discover them, what it means to your life, this is your time to shine. And Lynette, you're actually, is it Lynn or Lynette?
It's Lynn.
Okay, Lynn. Lynn, you're on my top left, so I'm going to start with you, if that's okay.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lynn Foster, and I live in Hillsboro, Oregon, which is just west of Portland, Oregon. We now say Hillsboro instead of Portland because of all the stuff in Portland. I lived in Los Angeles when Eurythmics came about. I was up and running. I might be the senior member, not only the only female, I might be the senior member of this group. And I think it was Sweet Dreams. And I got the album, and I didn't go to that concert, but I went to the Touch one in LA.
Wow.
So, and Eurythmics, what do they mean? Oh, it's the soundtrack. It's everything I listen to. It's kind of the song in my head. And then with it, I have all these great friends that I've known for years and years and years and years that mean a lot to me. So I would say that's a great gift. Besides their music, it's the friends that I've made all over the world.
Well, only having spent like 4 minutes with you all, I love you all already. Like, good vibes, good people here. All right, Mark, you're next. Tell us about you.
I'm Mark Stevens. I live in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina, on the East Coast, so a little bit further up than Tampa, Florida, just a little bit. I also co-host a Eurythmics podcast called Eurythmics, the music and videos of Dave Stewart and Annie Lennox with Rex Saldana, and he's on the West Coast. And we do them very sporadically. We're not nearly as devoted as you are, Jerry. And I'm sure it shows in our ratings at this point.
No.
So been a fan since my brother. I was 14 when Eurythmics came out, and my brother and I were kind of obsessed with recording things with our little Panasonic tape recorder, and we had sort of discovered pop music. My father was, a big fan of music, country music, Simon and Garfunkel and that kind of stuff. So we knew about music and we were kind of discovering pop music. But my brother ran in one day in the den and he said, "You've got to hear this song." And he had recorded Sweet Dreams from the radio. And so that's what started it all. And I just discovered last week that Love Is a Stranger was debuted on the top 100 at 81 on my birthday on September 17th.
Mine too.
Yeah.
How cool.
So I never knew that until just the other day.
Well,
But
that's cool. It's a
so
good day.
it just, that song did it. And then Love Is a Stranger came out. And I was, again, very young. So I bought the singles up until I think the first album that I had was actually Be Yourself Tonight.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
You know, again, I was young and I was trying to discover music. So I would buy the singles and all that. And it didn't really kind of dawn on me for a while. Like, okay, so you can get this thing that's called an album and it has all these songs on. So it took a little while. But then I quickly became a collector of sorts, going through Goldmine magazine. We all remember that, you know,
Oh, yeah.
that had top that was about 6-point top, and you had to go through it, and you would call them up and hope they still had whatever it was you were trying to get. But been a fan ever since, and it as everybody else has said, it's the soundtrack to my life, and so we'll get to In the Garden and how we all discovered that in a little while. But I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here, and thank you for giving me the blessing to do this podcast, even though you have one. And that was your warmth and everything from the beginning was so appreciated and so awesome. So I encourage everyone after they watch this to go watch. What was the name of your podcast one more time, just so people can write it down?
It's very long. Eurythmics, the music and videos of Dave Stewart and Annie Lennox.
Wonderful.
You can find it on any podcast station and on YouTube and all that, just like yours. So
Cool. All right. Well, someone that's a little bit further out than in the rest of us, we have Mike here.
Hi. It's funny hearing these stories because it mirrors exactly what I went through as well. So it started with Sweet Dreams. I was captivated by the sound and the imagery of the video. And I remember at the time being just completely absorbed with what is this band? What is this image? But then I heard Love Is a Stranger. And I thought Eurythmics must be like have two different female singers because it was so, you know, Annie's vocals were so different than Sweet Dreams, and I thought, oh, they must be a band or, you know, several singers. And then I realized this was all one person, and I was sold. I was sold. But being in New Zealand, we did not have a lot of access to the latest things that were coming out of England at the time. So things would arrive about 3 months later. And it was very hard for me to get hold of collectible stuff and to really follow my must-have-it-all passion. And I didn't actually start collecting Eurythmic stuff until 1989 when We 2R1 came around. And there was a man who I worked with who said to me, there's a magazine called Record Collector. And, you know, all the magazines at the time, and I would sneak out at work at lunchtime and go through the magazines in the bookstores, write down the phone numbers and the fax numbers of Adrian's, Sister Ray, Spiral Scratch, all these record stores in England, and I would fax them from work. And they would send back a list of stuff that they had. And that's when the collecting bug really bit me. I sensed Eurythmics were coming to an end at that time, and I thought, oh my God, I must have everything. I must have everything. So that's my history. I'm a little late to the party when it comes to collecting, but since then I pursued it with a passion, the music, everything. But Jeremy, I just want to say, you know, when you held up that little book with the discography, I nearly died because, yes, that book there. I remember buying that before PayPal from someone in South Africa. They had it on eBay, and I stuffed, I think, $10 into an envelope. You know, we would send cash in the mail. and I hid it in an envelope, and I mailed it to South Africa, and it turned up about a month later.
Wow.
There's lots of stories like that I can recall when I see collectible things. And it's been a great journey. And obviously I met Mark and Lynn and many others in the Eurythmics group. It's been fantastic. Yeah.
That's why I think these podcasts are so important, because the music will live forever. But for us to tell the stories of what it meant to our lives in real time as a fan base is something that I think is so important to record. And, how it felt to us, how the song felt to us the first time we heard it, what pop culture was like. Those are all just as important as the songs.
Yeah.
All right. So, Nick, thank you for coming to Eurythmics party. Please introduce yourself for everybody.
I'm Nick. I'm from upstate New York, and my history with the Eurythmics probably extends to a lot of their hits. I believe I was 1 year old when their final album, Peace, was released. So I know. So I pretty much only knew songs that were played at the radio well after the fact that they were released, but I gravitated towards Annie's voice. I heard a couple of her solo songs on the radio. Walking on Broken Glass is an absolute bop. I absolutely love that song. Dave Stewart, he did some production work with Stevie Nicks, so I was familiar with some of his work as well. Tom Petty with Don't Come Around Here No More, which is one of my favorites of his. So I decided to familiarize myself with the rest of the band's discography, and I found that there was a lot to enjoy. So I also looked at some articles in preparation for this from New Musical Express, Rolling Stone, just so I could get the background on the history of the band, its formation, and I found it to be a very worthwhile experience. And I'm excited to talk about it.
Cool.
Yeah, Nick, I love you joining the podcast because you do all the research, and it's so cool to hear how the music lands with somebody that was born a little bit later, So, when the music came into my life, that's when Annie and Boy George were both out, the polar opposites of the androgyny. And I remember that moment in the Love is a Stranger video where she pulled off the blonde wig and started combing her hair, and it was kind of almost scary in a way. Like, it was a very bold image for 83 or 84, whatever year that was. And, here we are in 2024, still just as moved and in love with all this as ever, I'm sure. So, all right. Well, Annie and Dave were in a band, The Tourists, which I knew about them from this book, but they had a greatest hits in 1984, should have been greatest hits, and I found that at a record store. One of my prized possessions is I found the Luminous Basement CD from Japan on eBay, which is so expensive. But before we go into the album, is there anything on anyone's want list that people want to advertise to the world that they're looking for? I want the Soul Dad Annie Lennox promo single with the Spanish version of Lonely. That's what I'm looking for. You have it, don't you?
I have it, yeah.
Well, if you ever want to liquidate, and then I'm looking for. She had that greatest hits in 2009. They did like an earlier mix of it with some early mixes of the songs, like a acetate, whatever called CD, with like early versions of what is the song Shining Light.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yes.
Yeah. If that ever turns up, I'll pay anything for it.
Mike may have started late collecting, but trust me, he's made up for it.
Do you have the website, the collector site? Is that?
I did. Unfortunately, it's not up and running right now. I had my entire collection on there, and I need to give myself a good kick in the pants and get it back up again.
I feel like I might have written to you on Discogs before with some questions.
Oh,
I don't know.
Really?
Like years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here we are. Yeah. We're friends now.
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
It's not going to be really well thought of, is I'm not really a collector.
Totally fine. We're all bringing ourselves.
I mean, I have a lot of things, but since I've liked Annie and Dave, I've moved from LA to New York. I was bi-coastal, moved to the UK, moved back to New York, moved to Wales, and then moved to Portland. So it was really hard. There was a lot of, but I have a lot of Eurythmic things in storage, and I found something, and I think it might be sent to me by Ruth Aldrich, if I could find out her maiden name. I think I have something, but I have all the flexi discs from the fan club.
Oh,
That in the
Can,
book.
can I put in a plug for my little wants list?
absolutely, please.
Maybe.
Just one thing. Beethoven cassette single. I would, I was going to say kill a small child, but no, I'll pay the earth for Beethoven
kill it.
cassette single.
Well,
Yeah.
it depends on the child.
Yeah.
I guess.
So is that a rare? I guess that must be a huge rarity, right?
The flexi, yeah.
Oh,
The Beethoven cassette single or the flexi discs?
The cassette single.
I think it was only released in New Zealand and Australia. I think.
And what one is it? I'm sorry, Mike, I can't.
Beethoven cassette single.
I don't know
Mm.
if I have that.
Mm.
And how awful though that it was released in New Zealand and you don't have it.
I know.
I know. I wish I'd known at the time.
And you know, back in the day when I hated cassettes so much, and I never quite could figure out who would want a cassette single. I have them.
Right.
I don't have that one. I never knew that one.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, if we see it, we'll let you know.
Yeah, if I see it, I'll buy it and send it to New Zealand. You got it.
Yeah, it's crazy with a lot of collecting stuff. You don't really appreciate it at the time, and then over time you begin to realize just how rare they are, and you go, oh, if only I'd known.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what is easier for everybody so we don't talk over each other? Do you guys like to use? Do you want to use the hand raising thing, or do you want to just raise our hands? We'll just raise our hands.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, Dave and Annie and Tourist, they went solo. The debut album, In the Garden. I bet this is an album that I'd say a huge percentage of Eurythmics fans heard after Sweet Dreams. Except for Mark's friend who heard it because someone in a record store who liked Blondie recommended it. But that's funny because Blondie's drummer is on this album. So that is a little tie in there. In the Garden, it's an album that I found in the 90s. Don't you miss the 80s a little bit when there was like those legendary first albums that you never heard till later because they were harder to find? This is one of those. So I guess, does anybody want to start and say their first thoughts on this album when they found it and the story of this coming into their life? I found it at Record Giant in Dunkirk, New York. And I loved how Annie's hair, I love the cover. This is before she had the really short cropped hair. She still had the orange hair, but it was a little bit more feminine here. As always, they have that artsy album cover. This is a much different album, I feel like, than anything they did after this.
Absolutely.
Very, I guess, experimental. Yeah. Who wants to start it off? Anybody?
Can I say?
Yeah.
Yeah. I bought this after I'd heard Sweet Dreams and Touch. And I have to say, when I first heard it, I was a little surprised, a little disappointed because I was longing to hear those very strong, clear vocals that we'd heard on Sweet Dreams. And Annie's voice was at the front driving those albums. And I really strained to hear that clarity and that punch. And then I very quickly became to understand that this is, In the Garden is a feeling, a textured album, very atmospheric, and it's perfect in its balance of vocals, arrangements, atmosphere, and like I said, texture. And over the years, this has become my all-time favorite.
Really?
Absolute all-time. Absolutely go-to album. I listen to it all the time. And it's hard to place it in a place or time because it's just always current in the work of art that it is. It's very unique. I love it. I love this album. My all-time favorite.
This is definitely an album that doesn't, like, you don't put it on, you're like, that's an 80s album. There definitely is a timelessness about it, unique to this album. I did know Take Me to Your Heart and Never Gonna Cry Again because they did that in their live HBO special. So I knew those songs before I knew the album. It was cool to go back and hear the album versions. Mark, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's very similar to what Mike said, but I discovered it 85, maybe 86, and it was an import in one of the record stores in the mall, and it was just you know, with the other Eurythmics albums. And I knew it, by then I had read, you know, the biography that you had showed a minute ago, and, you know, from reading about them. So I knew what In the Garden was. And just as you had said, I knew Take Me to Your Heart and Never Gonna Cry Again from the concert film. And, but just, and I was 14 or, well, 15, 16 probably by then. And I asked my dad, oh, will you buy this for me? And explained what an import was and all that. And he did. But just like Mike, when you first heard it, you were expecting something else because you had heard these very textured songs and overlapped music and vocals and all these things. And it's not that immediately. It's not that. So, you know, you're kind of, so what is this? And, you know, even Never Gonna Cry Again is in itself quite a bit different from what you heard on that concert.
Yep.
You know, which very driving beat, and, you know, and Annie's doing her thing where, you know, it's all coming to crashing together and all that stuff. So it was you weren't sure what to make of it.
All right, Lynn or Nick, do y'all have anything to add?
So when I first heard it, I concur with Mike and Mark that it was different than I was expecting. But as the years have gone by, I really, really love it. However, it definitely hasn't, for me, it doesn't feel safe. It's not a song. It's like it's so different. It's funny that I don't feel safe when I'm listening to it.
Okay.
Maybe it's the experimental part of it. It wasn't quite the other Eurythmic music, but I listen to it when I'm in a certain mood, not to set an atmosphere by just, you know, having it in the background. So that's how I feel about it.
So Nick, I'm interested, having someone that knows the hit singles, then going back, did you even know about this first album before you approached the discography? What are your thoughts on it, having heard it?
No clue whatsoever, but when I started looking up on it and I saw some of the members, I knew that it was a relatively promising outing. But upon listening to it, one of the first things I noticed was that Annie's vocals, they didn't seem as strong and confident as some of her later efforts. She seemed to, I'm not sure if it was partially attributed to the production or the fact that she was relatively young when she recorded it. I think it's probably a combination of both, but it wasn't as strong in my opinion compared to some of the albums and singles that I'm more familiar with. I do love the instrumentation, the playing on it, some of the choices that they made in terms of the field recordings. It can be hit or miss at times, and we'll get to that once we do the track by track. But I found it to be largely what I expected based on the people I saw who were playing on and based on the fact that it preceded Sweet Dreams. I knew that there would probably be some left turns, some unusual quirks associated with the album, as is the case with most first albums from bands.
Well said.
I feel like, having heard all three of the Tourist albums now, I feel like Annie's staying stronger on some of those than on this album. Because she had that full voice on some of those songs. So I'm not quite sure. I guess it's just a production choice they made with this one. But yeah. Does anyone have any thoughts on the album cover before we go into the songs?
Love.
It's a great album cover.
I mean, you can just sit there and stare at it. I remember when I got this, I just stared at it. There's the, you know, all the pictures of Annie with the longer hair. They're just the best. They're the best. All right.
Isn't that the one, the picture with Dave with flowers or something? And dead.
Was it?
I don't know.
Was it Peter Ashworth who did
Peter?
Is that right?
I thought it was Peter Ashworth, but on it, I think it was Lawrence Stevens.
But I meant the photography, wasn't it?
No, I know.
But now Lawrence didn't design it. Lawrence didn't have anything to do with In the Garden. No.
Oh, okay. Then
He didn't do anything until actually Love Is a Stranger.
All right.
Yeah.
I think the art sleeve of In the Garden of all their albums captures best visually the sound and the experience that you're about to enjoy with the album. It's a very textured. There's so much in it. The more, like Jeremy said, the more you look, you're drawn into it, and that's exactly what it's like when you digest In the Garden. There's so much in it, and I was like you, Jeremy. I looked and looked at this image for a long time. It was wonderful.
Yeah,
All
I can
right.
see. Yeah.
So the first song on first Eurythmics album, English Summer, and I remember putting in the CD. You know, you're used to like Missionary Man opening the album, or Here Comes the Rain Again. So here comes this very gauzy, kind of mid-tempo, whispery vocals. It's very much like an English summer. I can just see myself laying in a field, the clouds, kind of a cloudy day, very daydreamy. I actually absolutely love this song though. You know, kicking off this discography is a pretty big deal. And I love that it's not what you'd expect. What do you all think of this song?
Mark, go.
I love it. I've spent summers, 2 summers in England, and it certainly captures it to me. Just all the sounds and feelings. So I loved it.
Aw. Mark or Mike, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I remember Dave Stewart talking about this song, saying that he wanted to capture that somewhat melancholic edge to summer when you know that it's coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
The night's setting in, it's getting cool. And if you listen to the song, you can hear the sound of an ambulance racing by. You can hear the voices of children sort of playing in a park. And there's like a gentle rain. It all sort of comes to a transition moment. And that's the moment he was trying to capture. And I think they've done it extremely well.
I do too.
And it's a little disturbing. And it sets the tone for the album. It's beautiful.
I feel this is one of those songs you can see it when you hear it, like you can see the song.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love it.
Because Jeremy, like you said, it's not the first thought on what might start an album,
Right?
Some piece, but it sort of does set the tone, and so I think that was probably the idea. But you have to let yourself sort of immerse yourself in it. I think.
So Nick, what were your thoughts hearing the song?
So one of the first things that caught my attention, obviously, were the crickets. I mean, crickets, they have a great track record in music. Night Ride Home by Joni Mitchell. I think Mother of Violence by Peter Gabriel, that has crickets at the beginning of that song. I think Billy Joel, Goodnight Saigon, they have crickets on that song too. And it's pretty effective. It's rhythmic, somewhat in sync, and it provides another textural element in addition to the drums that's greatly appreciated. It's very new wave, probably rawer than a lot of their more sleek synth pop albums that are to come later on, and I greatly appreciate that.
So 2 things we do on Phonogenics is at the end, everyone gets to rate the album from 1 to 10. Totally subjective. There's no right or wrong. And then we thumbs up or thumbs sideways or thumbs down each song. So I give English Summer definitely thumbs up. How about the rest of the panel?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up all the way around.
I forgot to say one thing. This song, I get the sense of rotting roses. I can smell them listening to this.
This song's about all the senses. Like you can smell it, you can see it, you can hear it. And that's the magic of this band. Because there's a lot of songs like that in their discography, I feel like. None quite like this one, though. All right. Track 2. The tempo goes up a little bit, but we still have that haziness, I feel like. Belinda. There's still kind of the wispy vocals. I love this song, though. Mike, looks like you got something to say. So what do you think of this one?
Loves this song.
I love this song.
It's so good, isn't it? It's so good.
I never get tired of it. It's probably like my 3 favorite songs would be Belinda, Love Is a Stranger, and a lesser known track called How Long from We Two Are One.
Okay.
But Belinda, it just captures you. And I've never understood why wasn't a bigger success as a single. There's a moment in the song where she sings How the Rain Still Falls, and she goes, falls, and the horns come in and carry her voice away, and it all just comes, it's just a trip. It's a trip. And at the end of the song where she starts layering over those vocals and harmonizing, it's just absolute perfection. I love this song. Love it, love it, love it.
The horn only comes in for one note in the song, right? Like, and that's amazing. Like, how cool is that?
Love it, love it. It's flawless.
All right, other thoughts on Belinda?
It's the first time, of course, in that great bridge where she, many times that Annie Lennox will refer to rain over her many years. I'm gonna say something, Mike. Just cover your. But I think this was an absolute terrible choice for the second single because it sounded at the beginning. It sounded way too much like The Tourist. And I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know if the record company wanted, okay, it's Never Gonna Cry Again didn't really hit. And so, okay, well, we need something that kind of reminds people of The Tourist. Now, having said that, I don't really love The Tourist very much. The Tourist didn't know how to use Annie's voice. And Pete Coombs was used he was mostly the singer, and she was most of the time, not all the time. So I thought it sounded a little too much like The Tourist, especially but once the song gets started, and it's an absolute gem. But I think back in the day, perhaps it would have been better to release Take Me to Your Heart, which I can't believe never got released as a single. It just blows my mind. Or even Caveman Head, we'll get to that. But so I always thought it. Now, and Annie Lennox said once, the first time she heard Belinda on the radio, she knew it shouldn't have been a single.
Really?
Yeah, I remember that. Yes, I remember that.
So, but it's a great song. It's a pity it didn't have a video.
It's a pity that wasn't a 12-inch single of Belinda.
Oh, yeah.
I watched them perform it today on Old Gray Whistle Stop.
Yeah.
And that was a great performance of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And along with, what else did they sing? Never Gonna Cry Again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was, I agree. I hadn't thought of that about The Tourists. It does sound like The Tourists at the beginning, that sort of
the rock
beat. Yeah. Chunky guitar kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'd never thought of it as a Tourist song, but now you mention it, Mark. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
It's the only song on that album that deviates from the rest of the kind of atmospheric sound.
Experimental sort of.
Yeah. But but that bridge makes it everything, everything about it is so perfect.
That's very Eurythmics.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so I feel like our tradition, we're going to end with Nick, who's coming into these songs for the first time, to tell us your thoughts. I love hearing it.
I would say that the song is atmospheric, but in a different way from the others. It has very much a dream pop aesthetic that really wasn't popularized until maybe even the mid to late 1980s. The song that comes to mind is maybe even Dreams by the Cranberries in terms of the instrumentation. And I don't have too many thoughts on this song other than the acoustic guitars caught my attention in that they're heavily hard panned to the left channel, and I greatly appreciate people who make use of panning in terms of the placement of the audio. So if you're listening to the song on headphones as opposed to speakers, that's something to look out for.
I did notice that, and that's cool that you brought it up. I do give Belinda the thumbs up, though. No,
thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
All right, so this is a song I had heard on the concert.
Fireworks.
I love the fireworks.
It's great.
Take Me to Your Heart, the In the Garden version is a little different than the version they did live. The live version fit more in with the Sweet Dreams material, but I do feel like this song is a little, like, I would know this is Eurythmics if I heard the song. It's a little bit more, I feel like, in the direction they would go in with the synthesizers. It's very, but just like the first two songs, it's very eerie. It has kind of that darkness in there. I'm I'm going through a little moment in my life, so that longing in there, I could feel that in my chest. Annie giving an emotional vocal. Uh, I love this song in the concert. I loved it when I heard it on the album, and I loved it today. A wonderful song, and I do think it would have been a great single. What do you all think of this one?
It's probably one of my favorite songs. It may be my favorite song on the album. And go and find Touch concert bootlegs um, um, of the Touch concerts, and fantastic live versions of that song, and so totally different and just so good. And I always thought what they should have done for the 1991 greatest hits is they should have gone back and recorded a new version of Take Me to Your Heart or Never Gonna Cry Again.
Okay.
Sort of in that vein where they had moved it to the sort of that live feel and kind of re them. It'd been great to go full circle and go back to Never Gonna Cry Again, but Take Me to Your Heart just should have been a single.
All right. Anybody else thoughts on this one?
Sorry. So go ahead.
You go ahead. Go ahead.
I think the difference between Take Me to Your Heart on the album and in concert, almost, I don't even think when I saw it in concert, I didn't even recognize it because that was about the time that I heard it. So I guess I heard the in concert version first and then the album one. I was like, oh, it was totally different. It sounded, it was much stronger in the concert. And
I agree with Lynn. I think that Take Me to Your Heart has been reinterpreted so many different ways, live and on the album, that they are so different. It's got a massive scope. Let's not forget the take on the Connie Plank EP, Take Me to Your Heart.
Yes.
Now that's really, really amazing too. And if you listen carefully, there are new vocals on that take as well. And it just shows you the versatility of that song. It's really amazing. It's a great song. But
I haven't heard that in a while.
yeah, it's really worth listening to. It's great. They've done so many different versions. It's not like you, Mark. It's not my favorite, but I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing how it's been interpreted every time. It's lovely. A great song.
I feel like in the live version, there's more emphasis kind of on the pleading of the message, and then on this album version, the In the Garden, it's kind of like a hollow emptiness there. I don't know. It seems just a little bit sadder on the album than it felt in the live versions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the live is more of that Annie Lennox anger kind of thing.
Yeah.
But go to one thing to look up on YouTube, Dave Stewart's Eurythmics Songbook tour, but it preceded his tour. It was 2019, what he did with Nile Rodgers. And look up, and it's called the Eurythmics Songbook, Nile Rodgers, and Intro Medley, including Never Gonna Cry Again. But the concert starts out with Take Me to Your Heart.
Oh.
A few seconds, then it goes into Never Gonna Cry Again, then it goes into The Walk. But so good. It's absolutely perfect. And the thing that I've always hated is nothing from In the Garden ever got played again. Well, by Dave and Annie in any of their concerts. And they just left it behind. And those songs were so good live. And I wish they hadn't. And I think by 86, they had such a string of hits, and I think the idea was we're going to play all the hits and then some songs from the current album. And so some things had to sort of, I guess, go away, or you'd have a 3-hour concert or something.
Yeah.
But they were so good. The only time it came back was early in the Revenge tour and Revival tour. Jonice James and Charlie Wilson performed it on a break when the rest.
Really? Wow. Just
for a few songs. And I actually mentioned it to Jonice once. She didn't even remember doing it.
Oh, wow.
And it was a very raucous soul version. And then eventually Charlie Wilson sort of would go away from the tour some, and so Jonice started doing it. Sisters are doing it for themselves in that little solo bit. So it didn't last very long, but so it did make another appearance, but not with Annie singing it. So well, Never Gonna Cry Again. So we're not. I'm sorry. We're talking about.
Yeah, Never Gonna Cry Again. Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry, I got ahead of myself.
And one thing on this podcast, there's no right or wrong opinion, so we're all going to disagree with each other. That's a strong word, but like for me, there's some stuff on the later albums that I didn't like very much. So some of the stuff they're playing the concerts, I'm like, we could have played stuff from In the Garden.
Yeah. Oh,
But
people would have been happy with that.
Yeah.
so Nick, what did you think of Take Me to Your Heart?
Well, I believe it was mentioned that Eurythmics ignore their first album in general. If you look at any Fleetwood Mac set list, they essentially ignore their first 9 albums entirely, with the exception of Oh Well.
That's true.
So you guys have it pretty good. But in terms of the production of this song, I noticed some very heavy krautrock influences, and that makes sense because they have one of the many drummers of Can playing on this song. And I'm not sure if you're as familiar with their work, but you'll notice that the drumming is just super mechanical, super dry, and that's very much the case here with the plodding bass. I think it was played by David Stewart on this album, if I'm not mistaken. And they had a series of drummers, including Clem Burke from Blondie, which is a cool perk.
Blondie was covered on the previous season of Phonogenics, so if you're a Blondie fan, check that out. All right, well, Take Me to Your Heart. I definitely give this one my both thumbs up. A wonderful song.
Absolutely, thumbs up.
Yeah.
I also like the typewriter. The typewriter's on this song, correct?
Oh, yeah. Is it? Yeah.
No, isn't I don't think so.
No, I think it's on the next, on She's Invisible Now.
Yeah.
Isn't the typewriter where she's like counting down backwards?
Yeah.
Yes, it's on You're Invisible Now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we are. She's invisible now. Another dreamy, atmospheric. I feel like those words are getting kind of stale in this podcast, but it is another dreamy, atmospheric song. We do have a typewriter. We have Annie counting backwards. But it's a cool song. The first time I heard the album, I'm like, what is this? But this whole album is a vibe, and this song is no exception. Probably not one of my favorite songs on the album, but not anything I would ever skip. This is not a skip. What do you guys think of this one?
I think the song is very visual. I can't help but see in my mind someone in the depths of despair in a cold, dark room where the curtains are drawn, counting daily, counting forever. Just perhaps sitting there. Sometimes I imagine she's just sitting there doing drugs, being very dark, withdrawn and cold, and counting down like a calculator. It's very visual to me. I always get that image in my mind. I love this song, and I love the introduction of that very heavy synth as well. It's certainly one of my favorites.
I feel like the woman who's invisible is like the sister to the loneliest man in the world from the Tourist song.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
I think that it's like you said, Jeremy. For me, it's not necessarily a go-to song, but the lyrics are quite visual. I think it's maybe the third. Cold, clean glass and a razor blade fly on and a passing car, closes the curtain to keep in the shade, closes her head, and now she's counting down. It's a very dark song for sure, and very, I think at the time for her. Yeah.
I feel like the darkness is almost kind of hidden by the numb delivery. Like you don't realize quite how dark it is till you sit down and, because even the way she's kind of whispering the vocals, they don't land on you as quite as dark as they are when you recite them.
Is that the point of the countdown? And you're counting down to something, and it's again, it's not. It was one of those songs that it was hard for me after discovering this after Sweet Dreams and Touch in 1984, and Be Yourself Tonight, it wasn't something that grabbed me. But when you just listen to it as a whole, it's a really interesting piece of music.
For me, sorry, I struggled with depression during this period of time. So this song was really hard for me to
Okay.
hear, but I related to it. It reminds me lyrically and the feeling of Sylvia later on, much later.
Oh,
In the, that cold, this person who's just on the edge and not going to make it. So,
But wasn't Annie in the same headspace at the time?
I'm sorry?
Wasn't Annie in the same depressed sort of headspace at the time that they made this album?
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, she was. They didn't. I think she and Dave had just broken up as a couple not very long before this, and I think they both went through a whole lot of difficult times. And I think if we believe the history that she had a breakdown, I think after this.
and I feel like you just can't fake that. What she's putting out here, that's something that you can just fabricate.
Yeah.
Some real shit here, and I'm looking to the future. I know some of these future albums, like where it really grabs into our heart, we're gonna have some intense discussions. I can feel it. Because I know I think of some of the songs on the later albums where I'm like, they like reach way down in your soul. So yeah, Mark, you had something?
It's always interesting to, I kind of went through the lyrics earlier on this, and Annie often refers back to, throughout the years, to certain words or phrases. And this song has mirror, which she uses. Dust, she's used very well over the years. Cold, the razor blade comes back and on touch. So there are things that clearly are visual in her head that she often refers back to in lyrics, and I think this is one of those.
All right, Nick, did you have any thoughts on this one?
We leave Nick for the last each
I
time.
know, I was sick of being last, saving the best for last. Just like, what's that woman, Vanessa? Who sings "Saving the Best for Last"? Like Vanessa, she was in
Williams.
Penthouse from the
Oh,
Vanessa Williams.
Vanessa Williams. There we go. We're giving you the Vanessa Williams spot.
Yeah, so the synthesizers, especially the they have a great amount of charm to them. They sound dated, but in a very good way, almost nostalgic in a way. Now, this song does have a pet peeve of mine, and that is spoken word in music.
Oh,
I noticed that the vocals, they kind of change in timbre, probably use a bit of a different microphone. And for me, it's slightly irritating for me, just the tone that she's invoking. It's a little bit whispery. However, the typewriter does redeem it quite a bit, adds some nice percussive flourishes. So I can forgive it for the most part.
all right. Thumbs up for this one.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
So far, we're doing good with this album. The fireworks have hit every song.
Fireworks. I'm gonna have to work on that
Goodness.
until I get some balloons
That's
go up.
that's quite by accident. I didn't do that by design. It just
I love it.
happened.
Well, we are to the end of side one. Your time will come. This is one of those songs that's kind of dissonant in the verses, but then what a killer chorus. Like, I just think it's the best freaking chorus. And this is one of those songs, if English Summer is like, the end of the summer, this song to me is a spring song. Like, I remember being in my car. I grew up in Western New York, so winter was over, and I remember just driving with my windows down on a nice spring day, and feeling like, now I'm still waiting for my time to come. Like 40, how many years later? Hasn't come yet, but I still have hope. But I just like when I haven't listened to this album for a while, and when I listen to that chorus, like, it's so majestic. It's the magic of Dave and Annie, and the verses are very much on par with the weirdness of the album. But then, like I keep saying over and over, damn that chorus. What do you guys think of this song?
Can I?
Yeah.
I'll just jump in again. It's very uplifting in terms of the sound of the album In the Garden. I have to say that the chorus at the end, where Clem, I assume it's Clem Burke, comes in with those crashing drums over and over that chorus, is just sublime. It's a really great song. Just love it.
Yeah, that has to be Clem.
Yeah, yeah. And I know I'm saying the same thing about every song, but I just love it. It's a very uplifting. And typically Eurythmics, it's
Mhm.
also full of melancholy as well. You
Mm.
know, the lyrics are again very dark and very broody, but it's accompanied by this irresistible drive. It's fantastic. Yeah,
It's like that
big
ray of
thumbs up.
sunshine through the dank, dark clouds of life.
It always is. It's great. Yeah.
And one of the words that she goes back to, time shadow. She's used shadow, and it's in this is
Yeah.
but a shadow
Yes.
of her former self. I mean, and
I
so
love that line.
that's a great line. This is a great song, and we had on the back of the Walk 12-inch. Where's it at?
Yeah.
Where
Look at that.
one of the live songs, which did not make for some reason the 2005 remasters, which was so annoying because it was always very difficult to get a good record, a feel from the vinyl for that, and I
Yeah.
want a really good remaster version of that live version, and it's the one live song I think that didn't get included on the remasters, and it's so good live. It's better live than on the album.
But
Which
this is what's so frustrating about this time period in Eurythmics. A lot of their live stuff, like you say, um, Your Time Will Come, is so different again. And it's like it's been lost. It's so frustrating for us diehard fans.
Well, I remember when all the reissues came out, it just felt like there was a lot of things that were left off. And I know that's something we'll probably talk about if we go through the albums, but wasn't that the case with a lot of them? Was there a good handful of B-sides and stuff that never made it to CD?
tons of things that didn't
Yeah.
didn't get lost. That you can listen to one of my podcasts with one of the fans, and who worked at the record company at the time, and a lot of it stemmed from apparently the masters couldn't be found.
Okay.
But who knows? And the record company didn't want to do more than what it was doing, so we didn't get like double albums, and we got just bonus tracks. So, leave that, Sony. We won't talk too much about that, but that's
And which podcast was this, Mark?
do what?
Which one was this? The one with Dave?
No, with Neil Wickens.
Wickens.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and it's a really we that podcast could have been 4 hours long, but there were so many questions I wanted to ask him, but sometime. But we should have him on. He's very knowledgeable. But this is again one of the best songs on the album.
Yeah, definitely an open invitation. If there's anyone you all want to invite, we are a happy family, very welcoming. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this song? Lynn, do you have any thoughts before I put poor Nick on the spot?
No. I mean, I agree with everyone on it. I love the bridge and when her voice raised. It
In the
built
morning
really well.
starts in the stillness of morning.
Yeah.
That's just a great thing.
All right, Nick.
I'll echo a lot of the sentiments that were made earlier on. The chorus is absolutely anthemic. It's probably the strongest on the album, in my opinion. The horn flourishes really elevate it. I noticed the drum production is really cool. They put a lot of reverb on the hi-hat in particular, some delay. There's some cool effects where I think the drummer does some quarter note triplets, some nice eighth note fills here and there. They sound a little bit different from the main recording. I know that Connie Plank, he did a lot of experimentation in terms of the microphone placement, where he placed the microphones far away from the drums, I think 15 feet. Sometimes they would be suspended. They did some of it in a barn, if I'm not mistaken, and they were able to achieve some wonderful acoustics there. For one take, I think they put it kind of dangling over a well. So it was a fun little quirk. I think that was in an interview with Tape Op that Dave Stewart conducted maybe around the early 2010s. And I love the theremin effect that enters kind of halfway through the song. It's probably a synthesizer, but it very much evokes it. It's that very eerie tone that kind of seamlessly and fluidly slides up and down. It's reminiscent of something that you would hear in a kind of a haunted Halloween theme.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely give it thumbs up. The whole first side of the album, not a miss for
Very
me.
strong.
The fireworks are coming back, baby.
Thank goodness.
No,
I know where they are.
I don't know where they are, but they're there. They're in our heart.
Look at them.
Well, we are moving on to side 2. Mark, are you able to stay with us? I know you had to take off at some point.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Perfect. I'm having so much fun. I'm so glad that we're going to do this once a month and go through all these albums because I love them so much. All right. Caveman Head. Definitely a weird song title. The song is just as weird as the title. Not one of my favorite Eurythmics songs, but also not a skip for me. I don't really have a lot to say about it. I just think it's kind of weird. Kind of reminds me of some stuff on Sweet Dreams where there's not a ton of lyrics in the song, just kind of repeating yourself. I don't have much else to say. Does anyone have something more of substance to say about Caveman Head than myself?
It grew on me. The first time I heard it, I was like, what is this? It was so different than the rest of the album. But it kind of grew on me as time went by.
It's interesting because I think of this album like, oh, this is their most experimental. But then I remember like the 1984 soundtrack certainly rivals this for experimental moments. So I guess it's just a more expected kind of experimental because that's more of the synthesizer stuff. And are you all? I know we're skipping ahead, but are you all fans of the 1984?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we can spend a month on that one.
We can spin them. The same thing with me. I mean, it wasn't again a go-to track, but I was listening to it earlier today, and if you listen to this song, you put it on full blast because it turned the volume up. And there were I don't remember when, it was several years ago, but it was many, many years after. It was apparently being played in clubs a lot.
Really?
And a big kind of thing, or club song. But kind of listen to it, when you listen to it on full block, and a lot of people have said that it should have been a single. And if the record company had really said, okay, we want people to completely forget about the tourists, and what are these two? That might have done it in early 80s. That could have been something. I don't know, but it's quite interesting. Again, it wasn't ever a go-to song for me, but when you listen to it, it's got some groove to it.
I feel like it's not a go-to, but it's also not a go away.
It's an interesting song for me. I find it very harsh. It's very, very in your face. It's interesting, Mark, hearing you say that it was a minor sort of club hit at the time.
Not years later that it was.
Right. Okay. Because I have a 12-inch vinyl from 1981 that has like a selection of upcoming songs, like a promo vinyl. Really? And it features, it's got Caveman Head on it, and it has Revenge on it.
Oh.
So that tells me that perhaps they were pegging Caveman Head as a bit of a hit to break them through at that time. It's an RCA 12-inch record. It's got no picture sleeve. It's just on a generic paper sleeve. So that tells me that it had some inroad. But the one thing I do love about that song is that Annie's voice is probably the most disaffected, most mechanical, like she's embodying this objectified image. I'm very beautiful. I will let you touch me if you want to touch me. She's objectifying herself in a very mechanical, removed way. And we talked a lot about the vocals on In the Garden not being as front and center. I think that's actually really totally intentional because Annie's vocals were there. They were heard on the Tourists loud and clear. And I think this is very intentional throughout the entire In the Garden album. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
It kind of reminds me of like... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'd say it reminds me like Donna Summer's early albums, Love to Love You Baby and stuff, she did the whispery voice. But then if you go back before that, like her full voice was there. She just chose not to use it on some of her early stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think Mike is absolutely right. I think that's the entire point of how it's delivered. It's on purpose.
Yep.
It is very much being objectified and talking about, and so it is that delivery, and music is goes along with that. It's now we got to find out what Nick says.
Yeah, Lynn, did you have anything before we move on to Nick?
No, I thought I already commented.
Oh, you did.
about
Okay,
it.
perfect.
Yeah.
Mr. Nick.
Yeah, so usually when I listen to a song, my attention invariably goes towards the drums, and they're very much front and center on this song. The super rapid hi-hat work. There's some nice syncopated rim clicks, courtesy, I think, of Clem Burke on this song, and that's probably a highlight for me. The guitars are super rough, angular, and edgy, and that's something that I greatly appreciate. The theremin sound from the previous song, it's back in a slightly altered form, so all the musical elements are there. In terms of the lyrics, bit hit or miss. I'm not as fond of the objectification of. I know that Annie's doing it herself, and it's probably not one of my favorites in terms of the lyrics. Very heavy on anatomy for people who are huge fans of Caveman Heads and song titles like that. It's perfect, but I would say that it's still a very strong song despite some of the lyrics. The "I Will Let You Touch Me," I'm not as fond of that, but I do think that the song would benefit from B-52 style vocals from Fred Schneider, kind of a la Rock Lobster. I think that would be perfect for this sort of song.
I can't argue with that.
Very much a surf rock song.
Never would have thought of that, but I can't argue with it. Well, hell, I'll give it thumbs up. I'll still give it thumbs up.
Thumbs up. I want to go back a minute to Take Me to Your Heart. Do you all remember that the Nylons, an a cappella group from out of Canada, covered Take Me to Your Heart?
Really?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
How was it?
It was great. I loved it. And who was there was an a cappella group that covered Who's That Girl? Who was that? Anybody remember?
Flying Pickets.
The Flying Pickets. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it shows the strength of songs that they've written that can be played acoustically, or someone can take a song and do it a cappella. But I love Take Me to Your Heart. Look that up. You can find it on YouTube, of course. A video, they made a video of it. A terrible video. But a great song. I forgot about that.
For some of our other Phonogenics families, we have like a little Facebook message thread, so we should make one so we can drop all the videos in that we ought to watch after every episode. All right. Well, I consider next song like the hit, because that's the song I knew before I heard this album. Never Gonna Cry Again, a little different than I knew it from the live version. We have Annie bringing the flute out. Always love when Annie plays the flute. She played it in the live version, and I just remember, like, as an 8 or 9-year-old, I was so captured by that live concert, which I guess we'll talk about more with the next podcast. But like the backup singers with their in the shadows with the teased hair, and then Annie playing the flute. I love Never Gonna Cry Again. I think this song is right up there with the best songs of their catalog. I'm interested to hear what you all think.
It's perfection.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah, it was. I love it. I love it. It's brilliant. And the video, even though it's very simplistic, was just great. It's got a little Dave humor in it, but it was just wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Here we go.
Here we go.
For a first single, I don't think it was the right choice. It doesn't have that hit single punch, that instant appeal. I love the song, but I think there could have been other songs that would have really propelled them more than that. Yeah, it's a great song, don't get me wrong. I love the video. Thrilled to see it when it popped up on YouTube some years ago now, and it's so well done. But it doesn't grab me, never grabbed me instantly. I love it now, but yeah, that's just my thoughts on it.
Now, I know you don't feel it should have been the first single, but do you think it should have been a single at all, or not even a single at all from the album?
I think Your Time Will Come should have been a single. And obviously Belinda, which I love. I don't know. It's a hard question to answer. Yeah. I think there are other songs that could have packed more of a punch initially. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Yeah.
And it's interesting. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Well, since it only managed to get to 63, I think it was 63 in England, but 16 in the Netherlands, though. So,
Oh, really? Oh.
So, clearly it probably wasn't the best choice for the first single because it wasn't a hit.
63.
Sort of, but and the album version is a little, it actually fades in, where
Yeah.
it literally fades in, which is a kind of thing. But again, totally different vibe live.
Yes. Again. Yeah.
That first Old Grey Whistle test performance, the first time they ever performed, totally different than what you're going to hear if you hear that single on the radio, buy the album. Why it didn't really have that exact kind of sound, but it was great. She's playing the flute, and two people playing the flute in the live version. So Annie and I don't know the name of the.
Sir Timothy something work.
Yeah, I don't remember now.
Again, the Old Whistle Stop played. They did that and Take Me to Belinda. I watched those both today.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go watch that. And I wonder if I think it, this made sense as a single, only because maybe this fits better with some of their later stuff that felt more familiar to me. So, in the context of this album, I had to think about it in the context of this album, not in their later work. So, Nick, what did you think of this one?
So in terms of its commercial performance, if we want to be results oriented, this was probably the best selection. I mean, maybe there could have been other selections because this is the only song of the two singles that actually did chart. In terms of its Netherlands position, I think it's referring to the Bubbling Under chart because they have a Dutch top 40, and then I think what's called the Tip Parade, that's essentially Billboard's version of the Bubbling Under, and they have usually 30 or so songs listed, especially back then. So it still did pretty well, pretty comparable to how it did in the UK. I actually think it's a relatively weak song on the album. It didn't really do it for me, with the exception of the flute interlude. I think that Annie did a wonderful job. I'm pretty sure that she was classically trained, and she said in interviews that if she didn't join Eurythmics, that she could have very well become a flute teacher. And I enjoy the percussion on the track. There's this instrument called a cabasa, and I actually happen to have one right here. It's the
There we go.
instrument making this noise.
There you go.
There you have it.
Wow.
So listen to that cabasa during the flute interlude if you're curious.
I'm gonna think of you next time I hear the cabasa. I give it thumbs
That's
up.
terrific.
Yeah.
It's a side thumbs for me.
Side thumb. Okay, our first side thumb of the album. But the fireworks are back, so that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But Nick, have you heard it live? Have you listened to the live versions?
I have not, and that might give me a greater appreciation for the song. I'll probably do that afterwards.
Yeah.
And some of the live versions and know what you think.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
certainly.
live versions are way more powerful.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because I loved it from that HBO special. So I knew that version before this one, and maybe by default that's why I love this song so much. Nick, shoot me a message after you hear those live ones. I'm interested in what you think.
Sure.
And Nick, she did say if she didn't do Eurythmics, she might have ended up as a flute teacher, but she wasn't saying that as a positive way.
Oh,
I think it was like that would have been my life, and it would have been horrible.
Oh, that's sad. I was reading as a positive thing.
the world needs flute teachers.
Yes.
Well, speaking of people in school, do you like my tie in here? The next song is All the Young People of Today. We're back to that mid-tempo, the atmospheric, the whispery vocals, another majestic chorus a little bit. Oh, I don't have tons to say about the song. Nothing on this album is really a skip for me. I like this song as a vibe. I just think it's a vibe. You kind of sink into it. Thoughts from the panel. All the young people of today.
The best part about it is the chorus.
Yeah.
The title. I think that's it's probably one of the songs, top 5 songs on the album for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree that the
love
chorus
this
is what stays there. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Mike.
Well, I kind of think it's a vibe. I kind of stepped back on this song because I thought the chorus was good, but I just kind of I didn't like it. It didn't get me.
Well, it kind of harkens to She's Invisible Now. When you pay attention to the lyrics, she's also talking about people objectifying, or men,
Yeah.
boys objectifying women. So what is it? Young men in an air of independence will take you at their leisure. Leisure, they live for pleasure. All the young people of today, young girls, an air of mystery, are dreaming from their towers. They smell of flowers. Young men, they can do anything. They are set to win with unmatched power. She's not saying that with, you know, there's some, yeah, she's making a point there.
Yeah, true.
I was completely drawn into the song from the very first moment I heard it, mainly because, again, Annie captures that amazing sense of isolation and being removed and observing.
Sure.
And as a angst-ridden teenager at the time, I really related to that, because that's how I felt. And I think a lot of teenagers who are in that phase in their life can probably relate well. The one thing I love also about that song is there's Dave, and I'm sorry, Nick, spoken vocals again. He's mumbling something like having a conversation with Annie in the background, and your ear just strains to hear what they're saying. And again, it's just one of those wonderful Eurythmic moments where they draw you in. There's layers and layers and layers of sound and atmosphere, and I love this song. The chorus, everything about it. Yeah.
The chorus is everything. It really,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, Nick, we already know you don't like the spoken word vocals. What do you think of the rest of the song?
I would classify it as just a very hypnotic composition. It's very much a vibe song that you could put on the background, and when you don't pay too much attention to it, it works very well. And even when you do pay attention to it, it's by no means a very strong song. But in terms of the chorus, I would say that it's a relatively even, flat song. In terms of the apex, which the chorus should be, it's a slight bump in terms of the intensity, and I don't hold it against the song. I think it's pretty effective in that form. I, of course, love the drums and all the delay that they're putting on the tom-tom hits. There might be some rototom effects here and there too. So it gets an extra point for that.
Well, I give it like almost a 2 thumbs up. We're still gonna go with the thumbs up, but
I can't ever do a thumbs down, but I'm going to do that.
oh, the sideways. This is an
I'm
album that
doing
I did.
diagonal thumbs.
I did feel when this album I first heard it, and I still feel a little bit that it just kind of loses a little steam as it gets towards the end for me.
I agree with that characterization.
The next song is Sing Sing. We're in another language. It has a nice beat, but I don't care about the song. Like I have no thoughts. I'm not a very cultured. Let's put it this way: I don't watch movies with subtitles because I just don't have the patience. So whatever Annie's singing about here, I never bothered to put it in a Google Translate. But somebody here must love the song, so you're gonna tell why you do, and it's gonna save the song for me, right?
Mike.
Oh,
Okay. This is the one song that I really don't especially like.
oh,
Yeah, and obviously I looked up the lyrics and thought, oh yes, she's talking about people commuting to work and the humdrum of it all, and I think she even says how horrific it is to watch as towards the end of the song in English. And recently, the song came up for discussion on the Eurythmics page. I think you might remember this, Mark and Lynn. Someone talked about the background noises sounding like a circus. And when I heard someone say that in that context, I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because the whole thing, the daily grind life, it is a circus. And I
Sure.
was quite surprised to look at it in that way. And I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense. I get what they're saying, but like you, Jeremy, it's not one of my favorites. No. But I
No,
appreciate it.
not a favorite. But does anyone speak French to, on the on the podcast here?
Comme ci, comme ça. Yeah. I had to look it up. A
Oh.
lot of, yeah.
So it's probably hard to get into. Well, although I love their cover of Tous les Garçons, so
Yeah.
so I can't say it's just the lyrics, but it's not. It's, I guess, my least favorite song on the album.
I feel like if a song that's in another language has like a catchy chorus that I can sing along to, then I'm in for the song. But this song, just there's nothing about it to hook me in. There wasn't a melody that stuck in my mind. It just kind of plodded along like everyday life. I see what they did here, so I understand.
Yeah.
Natalie Merchant did it better with Carnival.
I thought that it was sort of, a nice, it's sort of, sort of melodic. And then you look up the lyrics. Oh, okay. I got the animals at the beginning. So that's kind of.
There's gonna be a fan out there that absolutely loves the song, and they're gonna roast us in the comments on YouTube.
Nick?
Yeah, Nick. He's gonna be like, "This is the best song on the album."
I actually will not be saying that, although it's probably middle tier to maybe I would probably say that's bottom half in terms of quality. I do like the disco beat with the drums where the hi-hat's doing a lot of action, and then the breakdown where there are a bunch of cool audio effects, people screaming, making animal noises, popping noises. I have a penchant for cool audio collages. You have some cool noises that are kind of panning from the left to the right speaker. So that's greatly appreciated in my book. It's something that I gravitate towards quite a bit. I try to go for a very textural experience where even if something might not be melodically immediate for the listener, the production tricks that are put in there, they can kind of dredge up some different forms of appreciation, at least for me. Still doesn't really save the song because there's not much there to go off. It's more so a sonic experiment for them. They probably had more fun making it than we did listening to it.
Yeah,
That's perfectly said, actually.
yeah, I would agree with that. Now, Nick, your distaste for spoken word vocals cannot come out when we talk about Beethoven from the Savage album, because that's a masterpiece. All right, but back to In the Garden. I give Sing Sing a side. I'm giving the sideways. No fireworks for me this time around.
I agree with that. Side thumbs.
So I love when a band's title track is on a totally different album. When they came out with an album called Revenge, I thought it was so cool that the actual song Revenge was on a whole different album. Can anyone off the top of their head think of any other time that happened for an artist? I know there's other ones, but I didn't do my research.
King Crimson for Starless and Bible Black. I think they had a song called Starless on their next album.
Okay.
They also had a title track with that song on that album too.
I had an album called Songs About Stupid People, and the song about stupid people was on the next album. So I did that. Very Eurythmics of me.
Very much so.
So I just, this is one song that never grabbed me either. I felt like the vocal was so detached and kind of not Annie's strongest vocal. This one just never grabbed me. And then, I don't know. Someone take it away, because I don't have much to say here. Anybody? Anyone have anything to say? Are we done with this podcast for the week?
Weakest song on the album, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just feel like it's like just like.
Oh my God.
For a closing track, it wasn't, often they were so good with their closing tracks.
Yeah.
And this one, I thought they weren't.
It could just be listening fatigue on my part. Maybe I just need to give it another chance, but I
No.
kind of felt that there was a bit of malaise for the final three tracks where the quality deteriorated over time, and there just wasn't anything reviving it or resuscitating it on the way.
I mean, think of the next two albums. The City Never Sleeps and Painted Rumor are the closers, right?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing, like amazing songs.
Well, it is
I have to.
that we all sort of think that it it never met its possible potential, yet it did, as you said, it was an album title in 1986. Lyrics referred to it, and then they record another song called Revenge Part 2 for the
Oh, yeah.
Roof soundtrack, with an alternative version on the remasters. And after, and I don't think they ever perfected the song. So,
Okay, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you all right there. All right. This song is the bomb.
Okay.
Oh, it's a
Well, yeah.
bomb. No,
It's the bomb. From the very opening drum introduction. Oh my God. Bam! It's got me. It's fantastic. I love this song. Love it. Love it.
is the opening? Is it repeated on Revenge Part 2? Do they?
No,
Oh no. Okay.
no,
Okay.
no. I love it, and I love all the weird fade out noises at the back, at the end of the song. It just hooks me right from the very start. I love the lyrics, the imagery of a snake sneaking up on you, and sometimes you're bitten and you don't even notice it, and the whole sentiment of the song, and that very heavy bass that's going through it. I love it. It's just a perfect way to end a flawless album. And I also love the fact that when they produced the Revenge album, she refers back to it on A Little of You, and she
Yes.
speaks again. Sorry, Nick. They say revenge can be so sweet, and I just thought that was a neat little touch. Really cool. Yeah, I love the song. Revenge is one of the most strongest songs on the album for me.
I feel like sometimes the sequencing of an album can affect the songs that become before and after. So I'm going to try dropping into Revenge without listening to Sing Sing before it. Something I've never done in my life. Because this is one of those albums I always listen to all the way through. I never just listen to the songs from it. So I will do that, then get back to you.
I will give another listen.
We'll all give it another listen. Mike made a bold statement.
Well, Mike being so quiet, we just assumed he agreed with us, but he
I
was
know.
back there.
We're going on
No.
on that.
No, I was all speechless. I was like this.
I noticed that.
But they repeat the lyrics on Revenge Part 2 about
They do. Yeah.
I need to see them suffer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Revenge Part 2, she sings over and over. They say revenge can be so sweet. But I have to say, Mark, Revenge Part 2, not good. Not good.
It when it was just on the soundtrack and it was something new, you could enjoy it. By the time that the remasters came out and there's an alternative version, that doesn't do it.
So there's 3 different versions. There's Revenge, then there's the one on the soundtrack, then the one on the remasters is a totally third different version.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kept trying to do it. No.
Yeah, third time was not the charm, I guess. Well,
So, are we talking about the B-sides?
yeah. Does anyone want to do a mention of the B-sides?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I did listen to I didn't listen to the live versions, but I listened to the other songs, and I don't have much to say about them. I thought they were fine. What do you guys think of them?
I love both of them. Heartbeat, and La Sinistre. Is that how you say it?
La Sinistre. And again, the Connie Plank EP had La Sinistre on it, which is a fantastic version. Very cool. Very updated. Yeah. Heartbeat is a fantastic song.
So would we have put those on the album and replaced any of, or are they appropriate B-sides? So they're both very experimental.
I think take off Sing
Well-
Sing and Revenge and put these two songs.
No, take off Sing Sing and put Heartbeat Heartbeat on it. Keep Revenge.
I think that would be a good improvement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Home is Where the Heart is that on the B-sides?
Not on
Yeah.
not on the one I have.
Okay, all right. I'm getting confused. Yeah.
What did we say? What was the
Home
question?
is Where the Heart Home is Where the Heart is. Is that on the remasters version of In the Garden?
No.
Yes, both of the B-sides are on the remasters. Yep.
Home is Where the Heart is a gem as
Oh,
well.
That's where the heart is. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
never Dragons. Oh, yeah, it's not on the remasters, is it? That's right.
I'm not sure. I don't have it with me right now. I'm not sure.
No, it's not.
Okay.
So is that another thing that's unreleased that's floating out there? Well, not re-released, I guess you could say. It was released, but not re-released. Nick, did you have any thoughts on the B-sides?
So what caught my attention is that on Heartbeat Heartbeat, there's one musician who's credited with a heart attack in the liner notes. So that really piqued my interest and it did not disappoint. I think it's a very good song, maybe even stronger than many of the songs on this album. I think that it would have found a nice home on the track listing. And then for the B-side for, I think, what was it? Never Going to Cry Again. Not gonna even try to pronounce it. It's super eerie. I love how the piano's mixed. Just nice, tasteful reverb. It's great low notes mixed with the high notes. It's just super unsettling and creepy. It's the stuff that I really enjoy. I think both are very solid entries in the Eurythmics discography.
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to them more. With the foreign language title, then the song's actually in English. I thought I was gonna get another Sing Sing, but it was not.
We've all made a mistake here. Home is Where the Heart is not an In the Garden B-side.
It's Touch, right?
Sweet Dreams remasters, I think
Sweet
it is.
Dreams, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So next month.
Mm.
Yeah.
What
But
about 4x4 in Leather? Is that from this?
The
yes.
live recording is on the special edition.
Okay.
But it's on This Is the House, 12-inch is where we first hear it. But they
Yes.
performed it and recorded it. Am I right?
Yes.
In the
Yes.
era. And it's the most reminiscent of what we're going to hear
Okay.
in Dreams, in my opinion. It's where they're evolving from In the Garden into where they're going to be. I could totally hear it on the Sweet Dreams album.
So that's the bridge.
And
The
that-
song is the bridge.
Yeah, and that we've never heard a proper studio recording of it,
No.
which
But they did perform it live in 1982 in the BBC
BBC. So that's the closest.
sessions. Yeah.
And how? But there's a studio version of it. They weren't performing.
No.
It. They had never recorded it somewhere in their studios. And where is it at? And I don't think it would be all that different. You just get a sense that it probably all that it could be, I suppose. But we've never
Mm.
studio version of it from them properly.
No, that's right.
But it's that should have been on some album.
Yeah, that's great.
Does anyone disagree with that?
No.
I think we all agree there should be a proper B-sides collection of Eurythmics material at that time, from 1981 to 82, 83, 84, because that was very exciting. And a lot of that stuff seems to have been lost to time, and nothing's been done about it. So it's very disappointing. And in that vein, also, I would love to hear some live recordings of In the Garden tour. That it just doesn't even seem to exist.
Well, there is a company that has a partial or an In the Garden tour. You've seen clips from it, and it's a company that has it recorded. And
Really?
And I think they're on one of their clips, 4/4 in Leather is being performed,
Oh.
and maybe all the young people of today.
Oh, wow.
And
Where can you see that?
I think you can find clips on YouTube, but
Okay.
it's one of those companies that if you have enough money, you can go purchase it. So I still say, we should do a GoFundMe And because who is that has it? It's theirs. They've recorded it. Now, how you figure out all the rights to all those kind of things, but that Sony or no one's doing it. And Annie is in the black wig.
Yeah.
She,
Yeah.
but you probably can find it there. It's been on the board sometime. But
Okay. I always had the impression that these things were lost forever, and that was what Dave Stewart kind of said as well. He had a feeling these things had just gone.
well, I think some of these. It's not necessarily things are lost forever. People aren't properly looking for them, or
Right.
certainly isn't out looking for anything. I think today on the Eurythmics Facebook board, one of the Now That's What I Call Music is going to have the Who's That Girl extended on its next
Oh,
4 set.
Oh, wow.
It's Now That's What I Call Music is the only entity that keeps releasing a lot of unreleased remixes and that Sony didn't do back in 2005. So someone's going back and finding these things. They've released the remix to There Must Be an Angel. Who's That Girl is coming up next. They just did the Right By Your Side 12-minute remix that didn't make the remasters. So those things are there that someone has access to that Sony didn't do in 2005. So, what things are lost. You can see things from 1981 getting lost. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think Dave Stewart would say, and we've all done that. They were 2 years later, they were moving 1,000,000 miles a minute. So, where's this cassette or where's this reel of this song? They weren't thinking that. And I don't know if you think about what you tried to do 40 years ago and then try to go find it.
yeah, I know I've lost some stuff that's just gone to the ether forever. But you think like the record label or somebody would have a record of some of this stuff. I just remember spending so much money on that damn box in 2005 and it was missing so much stuff.
Well, Dave had talked in recent years when he went back and started remastering the videos and how mad he was that the record company hadn't taken care of the masters.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Why we, and we've not seen all of them remastered yet. I'm talking about the videos at this point. Someone didn't take care of things that were incredibly valuable, which is a huge surprise. But, record companies get bought, RCA and then Sony and then so where all this stuff goes. And hopefully, it gets found or it gets mislabeled. Did it get filed under the Eurythmics or did someone not know when they put it in the shelf? Who knows?
It was interesting on the Blondie podcast, a gentleman on that panel, Barry, is friends with the band, and he was a big instrumental in their remasters. A lot of stuff was just in like dusty basements and the guitar player's basement. So who, like you said, who knows where things are? So the only thing to keep them alive is to keep talking about it and show that there is an interest out there. So there's an interest out there if anyone's watching. All right. We made it through In the Garden. We're going to do the Phonogenics thing and rank the album on a scale of 1 to 10. It can be in the scope of all music, in the scope of Eurythmics. There's no right or wrong. There's just your scale. Who dares to go first? Scale of 1 to 10.
I'll actually go first. I'll break the cycle.
All right, break the cycle.
There you go.
I'm going to give this album a 7.3. I think that has the potential to grow a little bit further, but probably not beyond an 8. It's a worthwhile debut. I could see how it did not take off immediately upon release. It's probably a little bit too experimental for probably commercial appeal, but in terms of Eurythmics fans and Eurythmics curious fans, I think that it's obviously a worthwhile listen, and I would recommend it.
Well, I think I'm going to give it. I'll go with 7.5 because they definitely have some 10. There's some albums that I give 10s to come in the upcoming months. This isn't a 10-star album, but I think the songs I love a lot. But there's more of the sideways on this album than some of the other ones. If I was I could between 7.5 and 8. Sometimes I get too generous. I'm like a 10 for everything. But I do love this album. I think it's a nice, interesting debut, and definitely not indicative of where we're going next month and what was to come. All right,
I'm gonna go with 7.5.
7.5.
Lynn and Nick. No, Lynn and Mike.
Yeah, now everybody's done 7.5, but I was going to say 8.
Okay.
Because I think it's a great transitional album from what they were doing with the Tourists to what they would become with Eurythmics in that one space of an album in between. I mean, the next album, Sweet Dreams.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, pretty good. And they kind of came careening out of the Tourists and did this one almost immediately. This was done in early 81. Tourists broke up in end of 80. So that was pretty fast.
Well, if you compare it to, what the Tourist, then it's a 12 or 15.
No, okay.
Lynn,
Well, then Savage would be like 14.
Lynn, you convinced me. I give it an 8 because it's the bridge between Tourists and Eurythmics. You sold me. All right.
Oh, good.
Mike, you're the finale.
I'm coming in biased because I was already in love with this album before we started this conversation. So I'm giving it a 9.5.
Okay.
And the only reason it loses 0.5 is because of Sing Sing. But I think, as I said, this is such a difficult album to place in terms of its uniqueness. So for that reason, it's timeless and it always stays there. Definitely 9.5. Yeah.
Well, we did it. The Eurythmics podcast series has begun. I hope you all enjoyed yourself and you'll be back next month because I just loved hanging out with you all. You're definitely the
Great.
Awesome people.
Thank you for inviting.
Yes.
Yeah,
thank
you. Thank you, Jeremy.
I have a feeling more people will be coming. So make sure to share this with your friends and in the boards. And thanks to the Patreon. Nick, I will see you sooner than later, I'm sure, somewhere in a podcast. And any parting thoughts before we adjourn for the month?
No.
All right. Well, we're going back to Tuesdays, if that's okay with everybody.
More to come. Boy, good stuff's coming.
Yeah, it sure is. Happy birthday to Lynn and Mark once more. And I loved meeting you all. I will see you all in October with Sweet Dreams. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.